SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
In Latin America, gambling takes another gut punch in Mexico as the Morena government seeks to impose new sin taxes on the sector. Categorized alongside soft drinks, tobacco, and violent video games, the first budget of President Claudia Sheinbaum carries a draft measure to increase gambling taxes by 20 percentage points. If approved, how will this tax curveball reshape the prospects of Mexico, a jurisdiction viewed as Latin America's next major market, but still in desperate need of modernization? I'm Fernando Noodt, media manager for SBC, and today I have the pleasure to be joined, for the first time I think we are together, by Ted Menmuir, editor-at-large for SBC. Ted, how are you today?
Very well, Fernando. How's it going?
Oh, very good, very good. Very excited to be together for a recording. So yeah, let's see where this takes us. I think the word "sin" is appropriate for
me,
this episode. Yeah, for us being here. Okay. Yeah. Looking forward to this episode, but also with us is Lucía, Gando, editor for SBC Noticias. Lu, how are you today?
Hello guys, how are you? I'm really happy to finally join this updated format and share some insights about Latin America. Glad to share it with you, Ted, as well.
Do you feel represented by the word sin?
Maybe, but not in a... Okay. Not here in the office world.
Okay. Yeah. Let's keep it pro. But first, let's carry on and just get this going with iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. If you are attending SBC Summit Lisbon this week, make sure you mention iGaming Daily when you visit Optimove at stand A555 and get your first month free. So, sin taxes. Lu, can you detail why these sin taxes have been applied to gambling in Mexico?
Well, the Mexican government has framed this as sin taxes because they are applied to products and activities deemed harmful, according to the president. In their view, online gambling causes social and economic harm to families, especially to young people. So they want to reduce the audience use and raise money for public health. The fiscal package mixes public health arguments with a clear need to close a big budget gap. The tax reform mentions the gaming industry, though it isn't clear if it will affect only iGaming and sports betting, or if it also be applied to casinos. So we have to wait and see.
Yeah, what is the local reaction to the government's draft budget proposals? Because, of course, this is a blow to the gaming industry. And, of course, all the other industries that have been impacted, but we are specifically addressing gambling here.
Yes, a lot of industries were considered sinful, according to the Mexican government. So, locally, the reaction is mixed and heated. This will represent a jump to 50% on iGaming and sports betting. So industry groups warn the rise could destroy margins and push players to illegal sites. This is what we always talk about. Like when you tax the industry so much, it also damages the efforts against problem gambling. However, some lawmakers and public health advocates support the plan. Overall, companies and trade bodies are preparing public campaigns and legal challenges. So the sector is lobbying hard, so we are expecting public pushback and media campaigns in the upcoming weeks.
Okay, so Ted, we are not Mexican, but we're Latin American, Lu and I. So we might be a little bit biased when addressing this topic and thinking about it. So what, from your standpoint, what is the international reaction to another LATAM market imposing higher taxes once again?
Well, my reply here is that this isn't just a LATAM condition. This is across the market. And at this point, it's hard to tell whether there is any surprise in any government increase in taxes, regardless of jurisdiction. I think for Mexico, the disillusion is that the Morena government has not offered any consultation for why it's applying sin taxes and its application to gambling. But again, that's nothing new for the sector. Governments do what they choose to do. Whether they choose to apply a consultation is up to them. So a 20% increase to 50 GGR is no joke. And I can only offer you kind of the perspective of Western PLCs, in which the companies that are most exposed to the tax rises will probably be Playtech, Codere, and Thursa, who will no doubt carry revisions on expected growth, but more importantly on their investment in Mexico. Mexico stands as a 10 billion market across land-based and online, and it's seen as kind of a stronger prospect and fresh ground for development. However, these tax increases do take off the shine.
Yeah, I mean, before Brazil was like going full at regulation, because right now it seems like Brazil has been there forever, but only a few years ago we were discussing, well, when Brazil regulates, and that eventually has happened. But before that, Mexico was like the big market in Latin America. So this is definitely not good news for the gaming industry. But why do you think governments are taking such a drastic measure on gambling? And what is their justification?
You see, I think we have to be very careful here. And I have to kind of reiterate that these are just draft conditions that are being proposed and could well be denied and neglected as a budget measure, right? This is still up for grabs. From local sources, it's a strange time for Mexico. Its economy is outperforming neighboring states. However, this is a government that faces significant uncertainties, especially in its relationship with its biggest partner, the United States, and the Trump administrations. From an economic front, I think one of the problems here is that the Trump administration wants to stop kind of the nearshoring of U.S. firms on Mexican provinces, and that's for kind of automotive, industrial reforms and energy. And these are kind of anxieties that are carried by Morena and President Sheinbaum, who is very desperate for not to see the economy contract in her first year in government. And also, as Lucia pointed out, kind of this big mandate for her to invest in developing Mexico's infrastructure and welfare. And also kind of ITs and securities. This is kind of the mandate that's driven Morena's tenure in government, which is nearing its a decade.
Yeah, I think it all reduces to they need money, right? It's like,
yes,
why did they do it?
But,
yeah.
I mean, they need money, but I think like it's interesting to put across, where Morena are, and it's not just an implication of needing money, but it's an implication of like its relationship with its neighboring countries, right? And what Mexico's kind of long-term goals are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's always easy to go against the gaming sector because it tends to have like this bad image. And of course, there's no like they're not trying to hide their how they are targeting the gaming industry, as they are labeling this the sin taxes. And I mean, they are getting with soft drinks, and soft drinks is my thing. So don't mess with soft drinks. Don't mess with gambling. That's my job. So I might hold a grudge with against the Mexican government after this. But how much of a setback is this for national gambling stakeholders in Mexico?
So it could be significant. A jump to 50% would cut operator margins heavily, make prices higher for players, and increase the incentive for players to move to unregulated sites, as we mentioned. So it will reveal a revenue and employment impact, and also in the long term, it could delay investment and innovation in the Mexican market that is already competing with its neighbors, now that Brazil has regulated its market, and Peru as well, and Argentina is going through a similar path. So there are expectations that this will hit to local operators' profit and to investor confidence. And however, the general reaction of society is always against the industry, as we were talking. So they could be seeing this with great potential, let's say. Many people might support the measure if they believe it found social programs, like you said, like it will generate revenue for the government. So, yeah, it's a mixed.
If I could just intervene, I think, look, one of the biggest setbacks here is the narrative of whether Mexico can modernize its gambling law that's being pushed by AGIA, the national trade body for gambling licenses and suppliers. And this comes actually as they launched a campaign the week before calling on gambling to be viewed as an economic benefit for tourism, IT, banking, and just the overall kind of modernization of Mexico's infrastructure that Morena wants. And again, we kind of return to this kind of standoff of, maybe Mexico pulls through with new taxes, but what it desperately needs is kind of a modernization of the gambling laws, the stakeholders, the licenses, and its overall program.
Yeah, it's definitely a scenario we need to put our attention on because, of course, like we said before, Mexico is one of the largest markets or one of the markets with the biggest prospects for growth for the gaming industry in Latin America. So we'll wait and see, like we used to say here in iGaming Daily. But right now, we're going to go on a very brief ad break so you can catch yourself your soft drink. Or maybe place a bet there. No, just kidding. But
video games.
Yeah. I don't think you have time for video games. Maybe one round of Clash of Clans or something like that. But we're going to do a very quick ad break, and we'll be right back.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
And we're back with iGaming Daily to discuss what's going on in Mexico and Latin America in general, which seems to be going after the gaming industry with taxes all over the place. Right now, it's Mexico that's taking the front pages. And if you want to read about what's happening in Mexico, you can read it across all of our media outlets from SBC. So make sure you subscribe to all newsletters from SBC News, SBC Noticias, and all the rest of the websites. You will find them on any of the websites. When you go and subscribe to any newsletters, you will find the rest of them there. So make sure you tick all those boxes and subscribe. But right now, let's continue to discuss how this decision by Mexico or this proposal changes the overall growth narrative for South America.
Well, of course, this slows down Mexico's growth path. The market was seen as one of the biggest opportunities, but with such a high tax, it risks falling behind. Like I said, Brazil right now looks much more attractive for investment. Peru has also a strong presence, and Mexico could fall behind with this decision. We are seeing something similar in Colombia. It was a pioneer in regulation, and it was like the example for the rest of Latin America. But now the heavy taxes and regulatory pressures have slowed its development. So the growth narrative in Latin America is shifting. I don't know if internationally it's seen as an attractive region like it used to be.
Yeah, I think the juridical uncertainty, if that's a thing, is probably the biggest threat for the industry's prospects, because like if you're let's say you're a foreign company, a European company, an American investor, and you wanna like get an investment of course in Latin America, and all of a sudden you see Brazil only regulated 8 months ago and they are pushing or proposing tax increases, and then you go shift to Mexico, and Mexico is also deeming the industry a sinful industry and wants to raise the tax just because of that. Of course, the justification, as we talked about, is much more deeper than that. But I think that juridical uncertainty is what threatens the industry's prospects in South America, and of course in Latin America in general, because Mexico is, of course, not in South America. But I think this is the biggest threat right now. I think that's what the lawmakers and the governments need to understand, that they need to set a framework and set the taxes they want to set, but just leave it there. Like make things certain for investors. So then you will get the investment, and then you will get the money you are seeking by increasing these taxes. You don't need to set everywhere in every industry. If you set a too much high of a tax, you will get the opposite reaction. People will not be consuming that, or people will not be investing in that because the taxes will take most of their profits. And so you need to find that balance. But first, to find the balance, you need to set a straight regulation.
Well, if I could just offer kind of a Western perspective, right? And I think there's especially in the last kind of 3 or 4 months, you can play kind of Debbie Downer on Latin American prospects, yes? Be it tax or kind of higher compliance, right? Or advertising restrictions as we've seen in Brazil. However, I think that this is much more coming down to kind of what is the market commitment of these operators, right? And which markets are they going to target, and which markets actually they view that they can scale. I don't think that this kind of changes the competitive makeup of Mexico. One of the things that we saw this week was Joaquim Agut, CEO of Thirster, say that they're doubling down investment in Mexico because they believe that the actual play for Mexico is necessarily that, you can have to be number one online, but it's much more about offering kind of that omni-channel experience to the consumer and a brand that they can trust for a growing market. So I think that this is much more a test of leadership than it is about kind of the overall kind of trust in the market.
Yeah, speaking of specific cases, specific companies, this is already having an impact on PLCs. And we recently saw Playtech's CEO also reaffirming their Latin focus.
Yeah, yes. I mean, look, just a quick review of Playtech. And one of the things that was witnessed in Playtech is that it was kind of a contraction of its GGR in Mexico, which has fallen from 50 million, I think, in previous comparatives to 10 million. However, this has nothing to do with taxes. It has much more to do with Playtech kind of resetting the terms of its joint venture with Caliente and Caliplay, which at one point was its biggest growing brand in LATAM and actually globally. And aside from kind of the fiscal kind of performance, Playtech analyzed that its CEO more wide stands by LATAM growth, and he told investors that they're still very much kind of evaluating upcoming challenges, and that what's happening in Mexico is something that's caught them by surprise. They've still got this long story to tell in that region.
Yeah, definitely. And at a 50% tax rate, how exposed do we think the Mexican market will be to new threats and liabilities like, let's say, illegal gambling?
It's going to be very exposed. Like high taxes can push customers to illegal operators, increase money flow outside regulated channels, and raise fraud and AML risks. And it will also pressure regulated operators financially, which can always create compliance gaps and raise operational risk. So the higher the tax, the stronger incentive for gray and black markets, as we always say.
Again, this is, the reminder that this is just a draft proposal. But I think that if we look at the kind of the dynamics being played out, I think that you have to put kind of Miranda's contradictions and be what is their kind of long-term outlook for Mexico. And one of them is where, as we mentioned, strengths in banking, AML, securities. However, these come under threat by applying a 50% GGR tax on gambling. And this goes against kind of their national mandate of the investment in Mexico. If I'm one of the trade bodies there, I think this is one of the points of concerns that I would raise before the budget gets proposed. You are opening up Mexico to a lot of liabilities if you put it up at that rate.
Yeah, you're good to observe that it's only a draft. But what happens if it turns from draft to an actual law and taxes do get applied? Will Mexico become a lost market then?
You see, it's hard to kind of get one of these definitive answers of, yes or no. I think gambling is much more kind of complicated and kind of structural than that, right? So yes, if these taxes go ahead, Mexico does lose a lot of its shine. But you've got to kind of put the PLC perspective here. It's still a young and dynamic market. It's still only at 10 billion. It has a lot of headway to grow. And conditions have changed. But what has to be remembered here is that sometimes the operators just have to play that the hands they're dealt, and they can do nothing about that, right? And again, I think that overall, this, as Thursa was saying, you got to view Mexico kind of independently and of the conditions it needs. And I think that kind of points towards there's always only going to be a few competitors in that market. It's going to be a very kind of omni-channel, land-based to online strategy that pulls through there. And I think that there, again, what I said earlier, there is a longer story to tell about Mexico.
So yes or no? No, I'm just kidding. But so seriousness, this is a very big story, and if it continues to develop, it will certainly be on SBC Noticias, SBC News, and across all SBC media websites. So, Lou, how will you be following this story?
Well, we'll keep an close eye on the legislative process, whether the budget is approved as it is, or if trade bodies manage to influence changes. So we'll also be happy to talk about all of this in this event. Today we have the Latin American stage, the first day of conferences. So we'll be happy to meet the industry here and discuss it further.
What about you, Ted? What about from the SBC News perspective and the European perspective?
With a lot of intrigue, hermano, man. I'm just going to say, look, it's no different, whether it's in Europe or North America or South America. This industry is, death and taxes, and I don't see kind of the narrative changes. So, we'll be tracking that.
We'll be waiting and seeing for sure. So make sure you subscribe not only to SBC Noticias, SBC News, and all the SBC media newsletters, but also make sure you follow iGaming Daily across all social media channels and your preferred platforms to listen to podcasts. Remember, we are on TikTok as well, where you will find snippets of the show. And that's all for today. Thank you very much, Gando. Thank you very much, Ted Menmuir. I'm Fernando Noodt. Thank you very much, Anaya McDonald, for producing this episode, and to our listeners out there, we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.